A man sees a bear lying in the middle of the forest. What happens next is unbelievable. Human beings are social creatures by nature, and our constant quest for company sometimes leads us to seek in the most unusual places. Humans have for millions of years lived with other animal species and domesticated some of them. Yet other species simply remained out of our training abilities, remaining ever wild and unruly. But sometimes that human and animal friendship develops on its own, bringing into our lives species we never thought we would touch or approach. Today's story is about such a friendship with a beginning that amazed everybody. But before we start, make sure you subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any new stories. The story started in a small Russian village by the woods, where Theodore and his wife Anna lived a quiet and happy life. It was a warm and beautiful autumn day, and Theodore decided that it was a good day to venture into the woods looking for some seasonal honey and oyster mushrooms. Being a forest ranger and knowing all the dangers looming in the seemingly peaceful forest, Anna decided to accompany her husband. Seeing bears and wolves roaming at the edges of the nearby forest and sometimes even wandering into the streets of the village at night was not a rare thing, and the villagers simply learned how to live alongside these wild animals, and everybody seemed to know their borders and kept their distance. And so wandering into the woods alone was not advisable. Theodore and Anna picked up their baskets and packed some basic stuff into their bags and headed to the woods. The couple spent the entire morning picking mushrooms, and by noon their baskets were half full and their bodies were tired. Anna suggested that it was time for them to head back home because she was tired. Yet Theodore wanted to stay longer to pick up more mushrooms. The couple quarreled for a while, and Anna picked her basket and headed back home, while Theodore sat at the foot of a giant oak tree, sipping a canned beer and watching red leaves falling down from nearby trees, covering every inch of the forest floor. Overcome by the breathtaking, peaceful scenery and the fatigue of several hours of wandering in the woods, Theodore rested his head on the tree and surrendered to sleep. Anna got back home, changed her clothes, and waited for her husband to come back, as she knew he wouldn't stay there for long without her, not when he knew she was upset anyway. Meanwhile, in the woods, Theodore woke up from his prolonged nap, and when he opened his eyes, he got the shock of his life. A huge brown bear was laying on the ground just 6 meters away from Theodore. The young man, scared beyond words, slowly rose to his feet and picked up his backpack and basket slowly and backed away silently, trying not to do anything that would alarm the giant wild animal. Throughout all of this, the bear did nothing but tracking Theodore with his eyes, while his head was still rested on the ground. After making a dozen meters between him and the wild animal, Theodore stopped in his place as he was struck by a revelation. If the bear intended to harm him, he would have done so while the young man was fast asleep. Yet instead, he only laid down on the ground and watched Theodore. And throughout all this time, the bear didn't move at all, except his eyes that kept tracking Theodore's every movement. Theodore decided to take his chances and started approaching the bear to check what was wrong with him, as it was obvious that the animal was suffering. When he got close enough, the young man saw a bleeding wound that was clearly so painful, and the animal was suffering. So the young man stood near the bear, trying to figure out how to help the wild animal that was clearly seeking help. Back at their house, Anna started panicking about what would have happened to her husband, and so she got dressed again and picked up her husband's hunting shotgun and went into the woods again looking for Theodore. When Anna got back to the place where she left her husband, she saw him sitting next to a bear patting his giant head, thinking that he was cornered by the bear. Anna took aim at the wild animal and asked her husband to slowly back away from the bear so she could aim clearly. Yet, after hearing this, Theodore turned around and told his wife that the animal was wounded and in desperate need for help, and he didn't pose any danger to anyone. Anna approached her husband and the bear cautiously and checked his wound, yet she was unable to determine its gravity. As night was quickly approaching, the couple left the food and the water they had for the wounded animal and headed back home discussing what they could do to help the poor animal in the absence of any local organization that would provide such a service. That night, Theodore fell sick with food poisoning, as it turned out that some of the mushrooms they brought from the forest weren't edible, and so Anna drove him to the hospital, where he was immediately admitted in and received the needed care. Yet, the doctors told Anna that her husband needs to be hospitalized for a week until they were sure all the toxins had left his body. After making sure that Theodore's condition stabilized, Anna went back home. The following morning, Anna went back to the hospital to check on her husband, and when she went back home, she packed some food and water and headed into the woods to check on the wounded bear as well. The animal was still laying at the same spot she left him, yet as she was putting down food and water for him, Anna discovered that he finally could walk, albeit slowly and with great difficulty. Anna sat there for a while, watching the bear eating and drinking, and when he finished, she patted him on the head and started leaving. Yet, to her surprise, the bear rose and started following her, and the effort was visibly painful for the poor animal. The fact that he could walk gave Anna an idea. Why not take the bear back home where she could take care of him? After all, their house was on the outskirts of the village, and no one would notice the presence of the wild animal. The bear and his newly found friend slowly made their way back towards the village, where Anna prepared for the wild animal a place in her backyard and made sure he received all the needed care and food. When she went to the hospital to check on her husband that evening, Anna told Theodore about what she did and that the bear was safe and cared for in their backyard. Theodore was so happy that his wife managed to find a way to help the wounded animal, as he was concerned about him. The availability of food and water proved beneficial for the bear, as it took him only 3 days to fully recover and be able to get back to his usual life again. One morning, Anna woke up, and when she checked the backyard, she found that the bear had disappeared, and it was clear the wild animal made it back into the woods again. Though he left without any farewells, Anna was still happy that she could be able to help the poor animal. When Theodore was finally discharged from the hospital, he was so disappointed to find out that the bear was already gone, yet knowing that the wild animal recovered made the young man happy. The couple got back to their usual life, and months passed without seeing the bear again, though they would always remember how he came into their lives and how fortunate they were to be able to do the unthinkable and help him. One day, as Anna was on duty patrolling a stranded stretch of the road by the outskirts of the nearby forest, she was hit hard from the back, and a pair of jaws closed on her left shoulder. The initial impact made her lose her rifle, and as she reached for the dagger by her side to fight back whatever animal was pinning her down and trying to tear off her shoulder, the weight of what turned out to be a giant male gray wolf overpowered the relatively small woman, pinning her to the ground. The pain was excruciating, and just as the helpless woman started giving up to her doomed destiny, she heard a growling sound, and the wolf that was biting her got hit so hard it went rolling on the ground next to her. Then as she turned around to see what was happening, she was surprised to find out that the bear she saved 6 months ago was making short work of the gray wolf that ran away to save its life. When the bear made sure that the wolf was gone, it approached Anna again and started sniffing the injured woman. It took Anna a while to gauge the seriousness of her wounds. Then she strapped her rifle to her back and used her good arm to hold onto the bear for support, as the animal slowly walked beside her and accompanied her back home, just as they did 6 months ago when Anna helped the wounded animal. Theodore was horrified to see his wife in that condition and drove her right away to the hospital, where she received the needed care. Thankfully, the injury wasn't so serious, and Anna eventually made a full recovery. Yet, the couple were amazed how the good they did to an animal paid off in the most amazing way. After that incident, the couple made sure they'd never lose contact again with their giant friend and regularly went into the forest to feed him and spend some time with him. Such an amazing story that ended in forming one of the strongest and selfless friendships. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and tell us what you think about it in the comment section below.